You're welcome back to the platform, Nigeria. We are live at the Covenant Place, Igbomo, Lagos. The platform is powered by Covenant Christian Center. Our next speaker is Professor Eghosa Osaghae. He is a professor of comparative politics and the current vice chancellor of Igbinedion University, Okada, Nigeria. Before his appointment at the university, he was leader of the Ford Foundation funded program on ethnic and federal studies, the director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Ibadan, and chair of the university's Senate Curriculum Committee. Professor Osaghae has published over 100 articles in books and learned over 100 international journals, writing extensively on ethnicity, federalism, governance, and state politics. Amongst his many award-winning works are The Federal Character and Federalism in Nigeria, The Management of the National Question in Nigeria, Crippled Giant, Nigeria Since Independence. He's speaking today at the platform on Restructuring is Federalism, Federalism is Restructuring. Please join me as we welcome Professor Eghosa.
It's a big pleasure to be back here again, and especially coming after the mathematical Segun Odegbami. Seest thou a man diligent in his ways? He shall sit with kings. He would not sit with mean men. Segun, you will continue to sit with kings. You will not sit with mean men. If you work hard with your God-given talent, there is nothing you cannot become. Look, from the streets of Kaduna and Jos and Ibadan, where he started, right through his forays all over Africa, today condensing here at the Covenant Center, telling us the things we always assumed we knew, singing a new song. God bless your ministry. Now, I also like to thank Pastor Poju and his team. It's incredible what you guys do. I mean, just to get inspiration, knowing that people are watching and listening and that their lives will never be the same again. Nothing can be greater. Your impact will continue to soar. Now, today I have a topic that, unlike Segun, I like very much. I'm going to chew it because I like it. In 1982, Professor John Ayoade, who is now Emeritus Professor of Political Science at the University of Ibadan, wrote an article whose title was Federalism in Nigeria, the Worship of an Unknown God. Okay? Federalism in Nigeria, the worship of an unknown God. You have never seen a concentration of such unbelievable commentaries from people who don't even know what federalism means. And they would never know, because the federalism that they think they know is one that scholarship does not know about. So, how to begin, therefore, is to say that federalism is not a Nigerian invention. It's not a Nigerian creation. Federalism is global, is universal, if you like. It has its theory, it has its practice. Nigeria, through the leaders that we had at the time, saw federalism fitting into our circumstances, and they decided to embrace it. In embracing it, they gave our federalism its own slant. So the first thing to know is that there are things that are common that define federalism, but that every country that adopts the federal solution works out its federal solution in accordance with its peculiarities. So, what works for America might not work for Nigeria, might not work for Switzerland, might not work for Brazil. If it works for America, that is true federalism. If it works for Switzerland, that is true federalism. If it works for Nigeria, that is our true federalism. So, you know. Now, in the books, if you really want to discuss federalism, you have to have an entry point. And the entry point is to ask the question, so what is federalism? Now, in contradistinction to, say, the unitary arrangement and the confederal arrangement, the first thing that strikes you is that we're all talking about the relationship between a national and central government and subnational governments. In a unitary system, there is only one determinate center of power, and that's the central government. In a confederal arrangement, it is the constituent units that have the determinate power, and the central authority then becomes like a dependent government. But in a federal system, there's a balance between the power of the center and the power of the constituent units. Now, federalism in general, and this is the theory of it, is guided by two principles. The principle of centralization and therefore decentralization with regard to the jurisdictions of the central government. Because a government has first to centralize before it can decentralize. So when you're dealing with matters that belong to federal jurisdiction, you talk about centralization and decentralization. The opposite of centralization is not decentralization. The opposite of centralization is non-centralization. So, in the jurisdictions that belong to the constituent units in a federal system, the powers that they exercise, at least in theory, cannot be centralized. So if all the powers that the constituent unit has is to manage the schools differently, you allow that state to manage the schools differently. That power, if you take it from that state, it loses its federal flavor because you have now centralized even the management of schools. That's all that can be claimed. Now, federalism suits very much so the circumstances of countries that are troubled by multi-ethnic diversity, for instance, countries that want common defense, because acting alone, you are weaker than if you act in concert with other people. So when the 13 American colonies got together, they discovered that, there is unity and strength that comes with pulling resources together. So if you want common defense, you have federalism. If you want to manage the issues of political accommodation in diversity, you have federalism. So there is a wide variety in the forms that federalism can take. And all over the world, all over the continents, you have federal situations. Now, Carl Frederick is not a Nigerian. Now, but he was the champion of the sociological approach to federalism. And he said, the essence of federalism is not to be found in the Constitution. The essence of federalism is to be found in the nature of the society that the Constitution serves. Why? Because he says that in general you will find that the propelling forces that make federalism necessary come from the dynamics of federal societies and how people conclude that, for certain purposes we want a central government, but for certain other purposes we need to protect our diversity. And that once you have that kind of feeling that requires a balance, that's when generally the need for federalism arises. The working out of the bolts and nuts in the Constitution will then take their bearings from how you define those common features. But it says, when you have a federal arrangement of that kind, it is not something that happens once and for all, because the society that the Constitution serves is not stagnant, it's not static, it is dynamic. And as that society changes, so the demands of governance would also change. Frederick says, when the demands change, the federal instrumentalities, if they are responsive, would also have to change. It is when the instrumentalities don't change that you have a problem with federalism. So, federalism, dealing with changes, is restructuring. And restructuring is federalism. Okay?